that I've kind of avoided us having a conversation about.
Uh-oh.
The Matrix.
Ugh.
I'm not going to go into it like that with you, but let's go into it a little bit. Right now, we know that The Matrix made a mere $22 million in its opening weekend.
Yikes. How much did Spider-Man make?
Let's not talk about that. What we're talking about are maybe something that we can compare it to that had a simultaneous release in theaters and on HBO Max. And I would say the closest thing that was as big, maybe in name, is Dune. And Dune made $40 million.
I can see that. How much did Godzilla make?
I don't know. I'd have to go back.
But Dune is better because it's a little closer to post-vaccine era.
Yeah, because Godzilla, Mortal Kombat, I think that they made what they made, or they've gotten their notoriety mostly from their streaming. Like HBO Max was benefit for them. But for something as big as like The Matrix, it feels like it might have been a hindrance. Right? People weren't running out to see the new Matrix movie as much as they were the new Spider-Man movie, for a number of different reasons, a lot of different reasons. Right. I would say one of the big things that helps the new Spider-Man movie, and you can disagree if you want, is the fact that similar to Infinity War, it's a movie that's picking up from a cliffhanger.
Sure.
So that helps a lot, because
Absolutely.
then you had those years of anticipation and build up. It's like years of subliminal marketing to help. With
that's a good point. Yeah.
Whereas Matrix just we
like, did you need that sequel? Did you need this conclusion?
No, you didn't. And it was just a different type of anticipation for it. I think me as a Matrix fan, 17 years later, not being left on a cliffhanger, not having that same level of anticipation, I look forward to seeing this movie at home. I didn't anticipate going to the theaters to see it because it just didn't have that same type of build-up for me.
Did you go to the theaters?
I did. I went and saw Spider-Man in the theaters. I've been to the theaters
for Matrix.
No. I went and saw Spider-Man twice, but I did see the Matrix twice at home.
Gotcha. And that's a different viewing experience. I just want to mention that there is a slight difference in the experiential movie going when you watch something at home versus you get up, get dressed, go to your car, go travel, pay money, sit down for a presentation. You want, like, if you put that little bit of extra effort in going to the movie theaters and paying more money than what you're already paying for at home.
That's also because we're setting up different expectations for
But that's what I'm saying. It affects the expectations.
Yeah.
If I have to get up and go do something, I'm expecting that it's going to be worth it.
I got up to go to see Spider-Man because I knew that the crowd participation was going to be similar to Endgame. Right. When I went and saw Endgame in theaters and we're all cheering together in unison with a crowd of like a couple hundred people, that's fun. That's really fun. And I knew this Spider-Man movie was going to do that. I didn't expect that from the Matrix. I didn't even
I didn't expect that either.
Right?
But like, I mean, look, if we're talking about expectations.
I went for the participation.
If we're talking about expectations, because when I too have been a long time Matrix fan. Like I've enjoyed more of the movies that people don't like in the Matrix trilogy. That's how much, like, Matrix 1 is all the way up here for me. I know Matrix 2 might be here for people, but it's like here for me. Matrix 3, it's lower, but I know some people call it complete trash. I can stomach watching Matrix 3 because of my fandom for the whole trilogy, right? But and because I like the conclusion of Neo's journey. But so for me, going into the Matrix Resurrections, I was excited but nervous at the same time.
Right.
I was excited because you're continuing a sci-fi story that revolutionized movie making for a long time. Absolutely. Movies have been copying the Matrix for years. The slow motion, the martial arts and all that, that's all due to Matrix, right?
Yep.
But and the sci-fi element, the themes of the simulation theory and control and all, blew people away. you know.
Yep.
But what I was worried about was, can you keep up with your own shadow? Can you keep up with your own legacy? Because the number one thing, I compare the Matrix to Apple, and I'm talking about Apple in the Steve Jobs era.
You're gonna do pre-Jobs and post-Jobs,
right? Pre-Jobs, post-Jobs, right? So pre-Jobs, or while Jobs was around, Apple was known for one thing: innovation. Apple came out with things that blew our mind. It changed the industry. Yeah, there were MP3 players before, but there wasn't an iPod. Yeah, we had little tablets around, but they weren't iPads. Like, every time Apple came out with something, it blew everyone away. It revolutionized the industry, and it was the trendsetter, right? That's what the Matrix trilogy did before. Post Steve Jobs, all they started doing was minor upgrades. Oh, here's that same phone we gave you last year, but like this time it's like the iPhone S8 2.A. They stopped innovating, and that's why I was like, yo, please don't let that happen with the Matrix Resurrections, where you have hit a wall in terms of what you can do to innovate. And I think that's exactly what happened. It was very limiting in terms of what they offered us, because maybe they waited too late, or maybe it's due to the lack of only one Wachowski's sibling there. Either way, this was not a game changer. And I think, I'm gonna let you go. I know expectations are not always fair to put against every single movie. I know that. But you also can't completely ignore it. You can't just say something that was so revolutionary, so impactful, we're supposed to go in there with like zero expectations. It's impossible. The average person going in to the Matrix Resurrections remembers how crazy and impactful the first one was, and they're going to walk in with that bias.
What I was going to say was, the first Matrix movie was really good at being like a jack of all trades.
Yes.
It was like a superhero movie. It was a philosophical movie. It was thought-provoking.
Yeah.
It was a thriller. And in addition to that, it had amazing action.
Yes.
Now, something I feel is different with the Matrix movies versus some other movies is that people walk away with different interpretations of what the Matrix meant for them. Some people just liked it as a superhero movie. They just want to see Neo overcome the machines, and they like that anime inspiration of, underdog overcoming, a huge obstacle. Some people like it for the ideas of the undertones and the story that's so deep and so integral to the story that it helped complement it, but you can also ignore it, right? Everything about the Alice in Wonderland allegories, everything about the iconography of the ship, everything about the biblical overtones and the Judeo-Christianity mimicking that they do with the ascension of Neo and his resurrection. All of that stuff that they borrow from, it can go right over your head and you can ignore it, right? You could literally just be like, oh, this is just a dude who turns into a Super Saiyan. Or, like you can have your own interpretation of the first Matrix movie. It wasn't until I saw The Matrix 2 that I realized that my takeaway from the Matrix movies wasn't the same thing as the directors. They had something that they were trying to create, and what I enjoyed from it was just a byproduct of that. And the second and third movies weren't as universal that way. They weren't able to do everything the same way.
Yeah.
And I don't think they tried. I think that they intentionally did this. They're artists in that way. And what they did was satisfy their own story without trying to satisfy the audience, which is applaudable. It's absolutely applaudable.
No, Matrix, that's facts.
Matrix 4, I think, continued and pushed some of the philosophical concepts that were introduced in the first Matrix movies. And it did continue to innovate with some of the things that they introduced from a story standpoint. But the things that a lot of general audiences remembered the Matrix for, the action, the superhero effects, all that stuff that they were hoping to see in the Matrix 4, it wasn't as prevalent. It wasn't a huge thing as part of the movie.
Yeah.
I loved it. I know I'm in the minority there. I love that little meta commentary that directors and writers sometimes do when they just talk and explain things like, hey, these guys were going to make a Matrix movie without us, which is now proven, right? Now we're seeing the news articles come out saying like, yo, they were going to do it without us. And if we didn't get on board, it was going to go out of our control. Maybe you would have got Matrix cats or something. Who knows? Right? Right. We see what people do with or companies do with properties when they're out of the original creator's hands, right? We've got Star Trek cartoons and weird stuff going on. The Matrix 4 is a love letter. It's almost a goodbye to the fans who've been around for 17 years. It gave them progression in the story when we didn't ask for it, and it actually brought some resolution, right? A lot of people weren't happy with just the death of Trinity and Neo the way they did. Hey, they're alive, they're well, they're going to get back together. They have a happy ending where they fly off into the Matrix with both of them having superpowers. Boom, check that box.
Man.
Anyway, I could go on and on about a lot of stuff that I liked about it.
I didn't care about none of that. Like, here's the thing. I don't have a problem with the themes that they were going for. And you're right. They were committed to the themes. And this is one of those things that I think a lot of creators get messed up with, and they get tripped up with. Because movies, as I've always said, movies are art, right? And art at the fundamental core is just another form of communication. And the point of communication is not just to talk or express yourself for nothing. It's to interact with other human beings. Because it's a two-way street, you can't just go and expect that whatever I say or do should matter. It also needs to translate in a way, because the most important thing is I've got to not only talk to you or present something to you, but it has to appeal to you too. Even if it's my idea, I need my idea to make sense for you. I need my idea to flow for you, because again, it's a two-way street. What ends up happening, unfortunately, is like directors, writers, whoever, creatives, they get so stuck in their own mental silo that they're like, yo, this is my message, this is my vision, whatever. And they lose sight of how that affects the audience. And what we saw in this movie, in my opinion, was that they were very, very committed to this theme of the power of love, right? We get it.
Absolutely.
It's a time-tested theme. Nobody's trashing it. I just thought they went too heavy-handed with it. I think they leaned into with it a little too much, literally, you know, like the whole touch and all that. Like,
I agree.
It was getting a little, to me, I thought the power and connection between Neo and Trinity was far more effective as a subtle, as subtext, rather than being so overt. It's fine when you imply it and we can get it, right? Like, we understand that the whole reason Neo saved everybody was because of his love for Trinity.
Or he didn't save everybody. He chose to save Trinity.
Right.
So that, I'm with you, because that love is too heavy-handed.
What I'm saying is the audience understood that the love was there, but it wasn't beat over their head with it. It was still like, I love Trinity, but at the same time, I'm trying to save everybody too. It wasn't all about Trinity.
And that was a lot of what people didn't like about the second and third movies, because they had this huge the second movie was the first time we had an R-rated sex scene in cinemas in like over a decade. If you remember, at the time when the Matrix Resurrections came out, it was a big little sub thing about how they had the first sex scene in theaters in over a decade. They started to lean heavy into the Matrix and into Neo and Trinity's romance that we didn't see in the first movie. And
That's
that took we had subplots of it, subtleties. Like you said, it's great when they do it subtle, but it's awful when they do it overt.
Yeah.
They have their own story that they wanted to push. Love, romance, that was their thing. It's what they wanted to tell, and we see it more in this movie. This movie was like, you know, them telling Warner Brothers, you can try to make a movie without us. We have the contractual right to do it ourselves, and now we're going to tell the story we want. Stop it.
Well, let's see how that worked out for them.
There's no more movies planned according to
at this, and sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes it takes for failure to happen to kind of be like, okay, give it up. It's not working. You had a great movie. Like the trajectory of reception, reviews, or whatever of these franchise, it's going down. First one was great. Second one, not so much. Third one, This one is probably, I don't know if it's worse or equal to the third one, but that's still not good either way.
I like it as much as the second one.
Ugh, I wouldn't even put it there. I'd say I can give or take. I'd probably want to watch the third one over this one.
I would say
I wouldn't mind.
I would like this one more if Hugo Weaving came back.
Oh,
that
would be different. That would be different. Oh, if I could get a Mr. Anderson,
a proper right, without having all of that spliced in footage, it would have been a different movie. I know I would have enjoyed it way more, but I think I read online that he declined.
I mean, he's been declining a lot of stuff. He declined Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
Infinity War.
Yeah.
He declined this. I mean,
he doesn't need to work. He's already got like 2 iconic, 3 if you want to count V for Vendetta because it's a cult favorite. He's got a lot of roles that under his belt, and he's probably okay, right?
I'm sure he is. I'm sure he is.
Anyway,
I wasn't not one thing I'll say, I was not mad about what they did in the movie in terms of pushing the narrative. I was hoping they lean more into that, like the whole war of control between machines and humans. I loved that that progression.
I wanted to see more sentient machines.
That's what I'm saying.
Sentient programs and all that stuff.
But this is what I'm talking about. You could have been emphasizing more of that. Like that's literally what the entire Matrix was about, was machines controlling humans and getting to the evolutionary point where they work cohesively. Like this
at least that's exactly what it was for us. But for the Wachowskis, the movie was about Neo versus Smith.
Right.
Which is annoying.
This is what the Oracle wanted. Like which is ironic because the Oracle is a byproduct of the Matrix.
I'm glad they stripped all that away. I'm glad they didn't bring in another. I'm glad Neil Patrick Harris didn't go on super huge monologues like that. I'm glad they stripped away the Oracle and the Architect.
But they don't.
Glad we got the little cameo of the Merovingian. I would have liked to have seen his wife.
Got the analyst. The analyst is the new architect. Really,
he's
just like I took over.
Heavy-handed. He's not nearly as heavy-handed.
No, he's not.
One thing that I will say I like about this movie is that the plot is not nearly as dense. This is something that most people can follow along with if they just give it a little time. There are a couple things that I saw that helped with the rewatchability.
I think people are gonna get lost in the beginning already.
The beginning requires a rewatch. I didn't understand.
The beginning
modals.
requires a rewatch.
I didn't understand modals. I didn't understand what they were doing with remaking that scene. But after watching the movie once, walking away and coming back, I'm like, all right, this actually makes sense. And that was kind of what helped me appreciate the first Matrix movie when it came out. Because when it first came out, I didn't really care about the supporting cast as much. I didn't care about the name of the ship, the Nebuchadnezzar, or its symbolism. I didn't care about any of that stuff.
Sure.
But after walking away and coming back, I'm like, holy crap, this is kind of dense. This is kind of fun to uncover. This is kind of cool. And I could say that with this movie, it has a lot of that. It really does. I know I'm going to rewatch it again because I'm finding more stuff to uncover with each rewatch, but I understand why it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
The Matrix. I could talk about the Matrix, but I won't.
Neo is not the one.
He's going to come back as John.
There is no one.
Well, there is the one. The only thing
there is no one. Especially this movie just proved it. The movie just proved
there is
no
one. The only thing that he did was he stopped the resurrection process. He stopped the loop. It's kind of like Ragnarok, right? If you stop the Asgardians from dying, then there won't be Ragnarok, right? So without the death of Neo in the Matrix and them resurrecting him, they stopped another iteration of the one from emerging, and then they kept him in a jail. It was very intelligent. It was a thought out solution that the machines have to stop this process from repeating.
They needed him. They needed him though.
They didn't need him. They needed to keep him locked busy.
No, they needed him. The one was made up by the Matrix. It was always a lie.
I thought it was a glitch. It was a combination of.
It's a lie. It's a lie. That whole prophecy all of that stuff. Now that's something when
The
you talk about
concept,
rewatching.
no. The religion behind it is alive, but the actual
Yes.
emergence of the character is not. He is
Oh.
an anomaly, not something that they intentionally create.
But
However, now that
you're right, it was a glitch, but it was a glitch that they started to manipulate and control.
they tried to control
No, they do. They did 7
each
reboots.
iteration,
They
and they
use
allowed
that.
Zion. They talked about
Yeah,
the
they
repeating
use
of
it to
time,
literally reboot itself and make
And-
itself better every
this
single
new-
time.
iteration of the Matrix said we don't need a hard reboot. We just need to do different things.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm in
Did
agreement.
nobody say
with
we
you.
got to shut down and turn off? We just need to restart the computer.
That's it, right?
And
It's gonna be-
but Neo is important to do that. Like the one is the soft reboot button.
He is, but again, keeping him imprisoned and immortal and not aware of his role in the one and keeping him alive prevented the ascension of another iteration of the one.
So how
Right,
do you
dude.
explain Trinity?
She is a byproduct of whatever they did to bring him back to life. They
So
noticed
he's not the one.
they noticed in the lore that he started to draw strength from Trinity. So something happened when either he died the first time he died or the second time he died, because he died twice, in which he started to have her as a tether, right? And when this iteration of the Matrix rebooted, they didn't create a new version of the one. They just have his powers nerfed, and then he gets stronger when he's with her. I don't know if this is a new version of the glitch because they didn't reboot properly, right? It could be a number of different things. We'll never know because there won't ever be any more seasons.
Fine by me. At this point, I'm like, yo, just take it out in the back and shoot it. Like, I would much rather pretend that this never existed and be very comfortable with the trilogy.
I'm happy with this version, and I'm glad that they added it. I wish that they just had Hugo Weaving in it. That's it. That's my only complaint. If
Yeah.
Hugo Weaving was in that role, same exact dialogue, same exact movie, I would have been fine.
Would have been nice.